let's continue our discussion about TVs, because almost everybody watches TV, right? So we've just got done talking about regular screen, full screen, right? And we said the ratio there was 4:3. That's the ratio in its simplest terms. So this is for full screen. Do you know what it is for widescreen, like default widescreen? All right, let me help you out here. Widescreen is, of course, wider, right? And the ratio for full screen was 4:3. For widescreen, it's actually 16:9. It's 16:9. So here's what that means. That means for every 16 units we have this way for the base, we would have 9 units in height. That is the ratio for widescreen. Now, if you look on the back of DVD cases, okay, I know we're kind of talking old school because everything's Blu-ray these days, but if you look on a DVD case, you will see the aspect ratio, okay? And the aspect ratio refers to what you see here. Is it 16:9? But that's not true for every widescreen. There are different versions of widescreen. And here's what they do. They actually take 16:9 and they rewrite this as a decimal. Now 16:9 as a decimal is 1.7 repeating. Okay, from the math that we did in the last chapter, converting fractions to decimals, this is what it is. But what you'll see on the back of DVD cases is that you'll see this, 1.78 to 1, which you would actually see it written like this, 1.78 to 1. That is the aspect ratio that you'll see. You know that little box in the back underneath the description? It tells you what the rating of the movie is, it tells you how long it is, but it also tells you the aspect ratio, and you may see this, 1.78 to 1. If you see this, that means that it is 16:9. Okay? But sometimes that's not the only aspect ratio you see for widescreen. Sometimes you see this. I think it's 2.35. Oops. Boy, that's not right. 2.35 to 1. Now think about what this means. In the last example, your standard widescreen would be 1.78 to 1. But this is a larger ratio, 2.35 to 1. What that means is that the picture is even wider. It's even wider than your normal widescreen. How many people here have a widescreen TV or some high-definition TV of some sort at your house? Widescreen, right? Have you ever noticed that some widescreen movies, you still see bars at the top and the bottom? That's because it's in this ratio. If there are no bars at the top and the bottom, it's because it's in the normal, the normal widescreen ratio. Now, it makes sense, it should make sense to you, that if I do widescreen on a full screen, that you're going to see these bars, right? You see these bars along the top and the bottom. Right? Letterbox edition. But you shouldn't see those if you're doing it on widescreen, right? So you've got this person and this person, they're like, yay! And when you see it here, you see the exact same thing, except it's now filling up the whole screen, right? But with this ratio, the 2.35 to 1, it would actually create some small bars on here. Watch that next time. Watch that. Speaking of ratios, still talking about high-definition TVs, what's the what is kind of like the standard for high definition right now? What's the number that you always see? 1080, right? Okay. Do you know what that means? Does anybody know what 1080 means? It does deal with the resolution, and here's what it means. When you see this 1080, sometimes you see 1080p as opposed to 1080i. That's just in terms of how it scans things, interlaced or progressive. 1080p means this. You have 1080 lines horizontally. That's what it means. But we know that the images are made up of pixels, right? You're looking at this right now, and these are really just pixels that you're seeing projected from the projector up there. There are also columns here that we can count too, right? And if you look at this, this is 1,920. If I were to do the math, and I were to still do the ratio, the 1920, the length to the height, 1080, how could you reduce this fraction? What do you know can at least go into both of these guys? 10, right? So you can reduce these by 10 and you get 192 over 108. How can I reduce this? We're going to at least reduce by 2, so 192 divided by 2 is what?
96.
Over 54? Oh, these guys can still be reduced. Keep going. Can 2 go into these guys again? How does it go into it? Tell me. 2 goes into 96, 48, and into 54 how many times? Can I reduce 48 and 27? I can reduce these by 3. When you reduce by 3, how many times does 3 go into 48? How many times does 3 go into 27? See that ratio, 16 to 9? So the ratio of pixels on a normal high definition monitor is 1,920 to 1,080. But as you see above, this reduces to the ratio 16 to 9. What does what mean? These numbers right here?
Down that low.
Reducing it to this, the 16 to 9, is just showing you that it's the same as that default setting for widescreen. It's the same ratio. The pixels are such that for every 16 you have going this way, you have 9 going up. Now, if you only had 16 pixels by 9 pixels, that would be really, really horrible and grainy. You're like, oh, I think this black dot is doing something with the purple dot, but I can't tell. Oh, there's some red dot. It must be blood. Someone must have died. Or, oh, no, I'm sorry. But that's what that means. Now, have you guys seen like the latest in home entertainment? 4K. Do you know what 4K means? Does anybody know what 4K means? Tell you right now, here's what it doesn't mean. It does not mean 4,000. What it means, Yeah, 4K means that's how much your initial deposit is on the system. 4K actually means this. It means 4 times the number of pixels. That's all it means, is 4 times the number of pixels. And how do they accomplish this? They accomplish this by taking this 1920 by 1080 and they make it 4 times as information heavy. Check this out. Basically, that turns the 1080 by 1920 into a quarter of that. So they quadruple the number of pixels, but they can accomplish that by just doubling the pixels for the width and doubling the pixels for the height. That's where the 4 comes from. So that means where you normally would have seen just 1 pixel, you're seeing 4 times as many in the same area. That's what they're doing.